Moin and welcome to the links! It's June and that means it's Pride Month! Technically it's the last day of June, but still that counts. Also, excuse my voice, I have the feeling I do sound pretty strange and sometimes my voice just acts up randomly, I don't know. But back to the topic. For this special month, my doll friends and I decided to collaborate and bring you a whole bunch of doll videos for you to binge watch. Each of us took one color of the pride flag and created a doll with this color, so all of them together would form a beautiful pride rainbow. Please make sure to check out all the other videos too, the dolls really look amazing. But first, let's concentrate on the color that I chose. Surprise, surprise, it's blue, my favorite color spectrum. There luckily are quite some options for base dolls, since blue is not that rare of a skin color for Monster High dolls. But then something even greater happened. I was just randomly talking to my friend Logan from Logan.dolls, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to take my Jin sculpt for this project?" And I was like, of course I want! So he gave me the printing files and the permission to use them for this project. Lucky me, I still had some blue resin, so I was of course printing the doll in blue. And here we have our cute little doll piece box. Please, please, please make sure to check out Logan.dolls and leave him some love. I'm super obsessed with his dolls, so it was such an honor for me to be able to use his Jin sculpt for my project. But with printing alone, the job is not done, of course. There are a lot of supporting structures needed to make a safe print, and they had to be sanded down now. So I spent a couple days with my favorite activity, sanding. That's a joke, by the way, I really dislike sanding, I'm too impatient. But still, I gave it my best, first removing the leftover structures from the print with my Dremel, and then going in with different grids of sandpaper. One funny thing that happened though, was that one of his hands was a misprint. My printer just messed up, so one of his fingers turned out too short. But I actually really liked that somehow. It gave the doll so much more personality and really fitted in the story I already had in mind for him. So I adjusted the other hands too by sanding down this finger. After an eternity of sanding, I had all the parts ready to be put together. Luckily, I already have quite some BJDs, so I know how to string them, and I had some spare S-hooks and elastics around. For the ankle joints though, I had to make my own hooks out of strong wire. But in the end, the whole doll was assembled and looking great. I loved him immediately, and even though my sanding job was not the best in some parts, especially on the knee joints, he was still pulsing really good. Printed resin is not as sturdy as casted resin is, so I did not string him as tightly as I would normally do. But he could still stand on his own and holds poses nicely. I'm especially obsessed with the 3-part torso, cause he can really curl up like that, you know? So again, a shout out to Logan.dolls. Also for all the hand options. Did I ever mention that I'm obsessed with hands? Well, now you know. Before giving the doll a face up, I like to have the wig done first, so that's what I started with. I limited my color palette to blues only, but mixed some black into his hair to have a darker blue tone. When working with yarn fibers, creating these blends out of multiple colors is very easy, and I love doing it. As for the wefts, I always try to make them as thin as possible to be able to glue them very close to each other, without looking like a helmet in the end. The hairstyle I had in mind required some long and some short wefts. So I glued some wefts at the top and some in the middle. It may look messy just now, but once the glue is dry, I always brush the wefts and then they look even. Another thing I always do before brushing the long wefts is to pull out fibers that the glue did not reach. So you can see here how much hair is not part of the weft and can be used for more wefts without wasting it. There probably are better ways to do this, but this works for me. Ta-da! Super thin and long wefts. If you saw my little wig making video I uploaded recently, you know how I make wig caps, so I won't go into detail here. I wanted to try the lace thing again, so I glued a mesh fabric around the front half of the wig cap and knotted small yarn strands into the mesh. The next video from my mini wig series will show this a little more detailed, since I now found out a good way to do this. Well, at least I think so. And I also found out a better way to record it without my hand blocking everything worth seeing. Just believe me, it takes time and patience, but it's also a very calming process. I ended up with this and I really like the result. The rest of the wig is just gluing on the wefts like usual, but this lace front gives it a little extra, I don't know, I just like it. The shorter wefts were glued at the back of the head and then carefully trimmed with an eyebrow razor. It really worked out way better this time than my last attempt with the light blue wig from the mini video, so I'm happy I could already improve on that. After that I just glued all the long wefts on the head and knotted them together into a bun. And here we have the result. I really like it. Since I was already working on the head, I decided to make the eyes next. I had some spare eyes left in my experiment box that looked really good on him, but they were brown. And I really wanted him to be completely blue, so I decided to make new ones. I casted some resin eyes and sculpted the iris with epoxy inside the base. After drying, I went in with some blue pastels to block out the colors. A darker blue on one half and a lighter blue on the other half. After the first layer of resin, I added some glitter with my mica powders and some actual glitter particles on the lighter half of the iris. The last step was just to add black to the pupil and put more resin on top. And here we have our beautiful pair of blue eyes. Before blushing the body, I wanted to make the outfit to prevent any paint from chipping. I did my best to give you a little more inside view on my process here this time. Sewing is my absolute weak point, and this time I didn't even have any patterns. He was way bigger than Fashion Dolls, but still smaller than my MSD sized BJDs, so, well, I just winged it. For his pants I had this beautiful fabric I once got from Name in Progress artist as a present. It's so beautiful and just perfect for him. But it's not stretchy, so I wondered if I should add some stretchy fabric as well and sketched out some ideas. I went with a second idea and brainstormed a little how to make this work. Sewing just normal pants out of one fabric without a pattern would have been enough of a challenge for me already, but I obviously like to make my life hard. Luckily, I remembered that one can wrap tape around a doll to make patterns, and so I ended up with these pieces of fabric that I sewed together the best I could. And look at this! It fits! It really fits! The first attempt and it was already working. I was so happy, you have no idea. Now I feel so much more confident to sew more for my BJDs. But we're not done with him yet, so taking power out of this success, I jumped right into making him a blouse. Again, I wrapped him into tape and marked where I wanted to cut it before removing the tape and receiving the pattern. I altered it a bit since I wanted the blouse to fit very loose and sewed all the pieces together. And again, it worked! It really fits! I was so proud, I swear. Feeling extra fancy and motivated, I dip-dyed the sleeves afterwards and painted a fancy pattern on top of it. I actually like this one so much that I want to make more of it for my other dolls too. Improving my sewing skills and outfit making is a serious goal of mine for 2 years now, so it makes me incredibly happy to finally see all my struggles pay off. As a last clothing piece, I wanted to give him a cape out of this dark shiny fabric. To make the collar stand, I first cut out the shape out of a cardboard and sewed around the piece. I then cut out the rest of the pieces to sew them all together. The collar turned out too small here, so I made it again. Looking good so far, but how will it be attached to the doll? For that, I chose to try out my eyelid making tools again. The first time using this was not that successful, so I never touched it again. But after all these good things happening now, I was giving it another shot. And this time it turned out quite good actually. I connected the eyelids with a silver chain so the cape could be attached to the doll perfectly fine. This already is the longest outfit chapter I ever had in one of my videos, but to make it even longer, let's take a look at the last piece, shoes. I actually tried sculpting a shoe base digitally to print out, but I failed miserably. Luckily, these Monster High boots fit to the feet of the doll. It's a very, very tight fit, but still, better than having no shoes. I dyed and painted them to match the rest of the doll, and the outfit was done. Then something bad happened, I dropped the doll and a part of the shoulder got broken. But I thought, hey, let's make this part of him just like the misprinted finger. So I took my epoxy sculpt and created a scar over it. It's not a usual scar, but a magical one. But I'll explain this later in his story. When the epoxy was dry, I sprayed the doll with Mr. Super Clear Sealant and gave the scar as well as the torso some blushing. Since his blouse is open, you can probably always see his upper body, so a little more detail here was a nice addition. As a last touch, I also gave him a magical looking tattoo with some nail art stickers. If you saw my very first BJD repaint video where I made Cordelia, you're probably familiar with that. Looking good, right? And last but not least, finally, the face up. Painting male dolls is something I'm not really used to, so I was pushing it a little to the end, I guess. But I quickly realized that this face is such a pleasure to paint on. I don't know what it is, but after overcoming the first insecurities of the black canvas situation, it was so much fun for me. Due to his overall blue theme, I mainly used blues for his face up too, of course, and really tried to build up an interesting aesthetic with strong contrast. But for a little more lifelikeness, there was no other choice than using some other colors here and there. I already came pretty far with the first layer of sealant and pastels, so on the second layer I jumped right in with my gouache colors. Other than normally with girl characters, I was not afraid to make his eyebrows too thick this time, so I just jumped in and painted lots of strands. I wanted to give him more bushy and thick brows either way, so I felt more relaxed painting them. Also, he's supposed to be a magician, so I wanted to give him some eyeshadow and eyeliner. Overall, this face-up turned out to have a lot of comfort zones for me, so I didn't struggle like I expected earlier. Finishing his face, I gave him some beauty marks here and there, since I realized I mainly never do this, cause I always forget that this is an option. I saved the paint with a few layers of Mr. Super Clear Sealant and one final layer of Liquitex matte varnish, as well as some gloss on the eyes and lips. I also added some glitter to his eyeshadow. You probably saw the big ears of the sculpt that basically scream earrings, so I couldn't resist giving him some. These tunnel earrings would be the most obvious choice, so I went with a few rings and inserted the eyes as a final step. And here he is, all done. I am so in love with this boy, especially once I put him all together. The whole time I was like, maybe he's not extra enough, maybe the pieces do not fit together. But once I assembled everything, I was like, okay, never mind, I love you. I decided to call him Damien, and he of course has a story too. When Damien lost his parents, he was still a child. Growing up on the streets all alone wasn't easy, but homeless children weren't rare either, so nobody cared. The years passed by and he learned to survive, but also to trust nobody but himself alone. One day a stranger came to the city, a young magician who travels from town to town, visiting the whole country and presenting his shows to the people. Damien, who only knew his city and the tough life on the streets, was fascinated by him. It was like seeing a whole new world he never knew it even existed. Every day he watched the shows from afar, always careful not to be seen, until one evening he decided to break into the caravan of the magician, to steal the magic items he always saw during the shows. He waited until the magician left for a drink in the tavern nearby, before sneaking into the caravan. His eyes widened in awe of all the things he had never seen before and couldn't understand. Carefully he reached out for a glowing object that caught his attention, when suddenly a blinding light emitted from the point he had touched the object, followed by a sharp, intense pain in his hand. He screamed in horror while watching his finger slowly melting away, like it's been eaten by an invisible force, when suddenly the magician bursts in. Eyes widened, he stared at Damien in horror while he rushed over to him to stop the curse with a spell. Shivering in shock, Damien stared at his now shortened finger, and then the face of the magician, tears filling up his eyes. He waited for the punishment, expected to be beaten up or even nearly killed like it happened before when he got caught, but nothing happened. Through the fog of tears in his eyes, Damien stared at the young man, unable to speak, when he carefully took his wounded hand. Since that day, Damien lived with the young magician. He was the first person who saw into his heart and treated him with love and understanding. He even taught him in magic, seeing his great potential and willpower. Over the years, their relationship turned from master and student to friends, and slowly, Damien started to feel even more for him. But he was too afraid to admit his feelings, scared of being rejected and losing the only person he feels safe with. So he stayed quiet. One day, though, they were on the way to another town, and their path led them through a dark forest. They were just wondering if they were still on the right track when suddenly a thick fog was gathering, taking them every orientation. The silence was frightening, but they could both feel a presence in the fog, lurking around. Suddenly something attacked, leaving Damien wounded on the ground. He felt the wound slowly widen like acid that eats up his skin, and with his last seconds of consciousness, he spoke a spell to save his life. When he opened his eyes again, the fog was gone, and with it, his young master. Damien screamed his name, tears of desperation running down his face, where his body was still trembling from the pain in his shoulder. But he was gone. The years passed, but Damien never gave up to find his friend again. He travels through the lands, practicing his magic, becoming stronger, and collecting every information about the mysterious fog and the creature that attacked him that day. He's sure that one day he will see his friend again, and when that day comes, he will finally confess. That was Damien's little story. Actually, it wasn't that little. He just gave me so many ideas, so I couldn't stop thinking about him. I still hope you liked it as well as the whole video. Please make sure to like, comment or subscribe and hit the bell button to never miss a new video. I am super thankful for all of your amazing support. Also make sure to watch the awesome videos from my collab partners, Enchantarium, Hextian, The Dolly Geek, HLE Crafts, Kairo's Workshop, His Name is Akin, By Kitty's Word, Jackie O, and Stitchwick Creations. Thank you guys so much for collaborating with me on this super awesome and colorful project. I am now off to binge watch all the videos and enjoy a free day before jumping right into the next super exciting project. Feel free to check out my Patreon account for regular updates and whips or even little spoilers to projects, as well as one exclusive video every month. It's completely up to you how much you can afford to support me and see all the content there. I am more than thankful for every one of you. You are just the best community. Have a wonderful day, my little lynxes. See you soon. Tschüss!